Hello, everybody. My name is Patricia Zate Singletary, and I am the Preservation Grants Manager here at Latinos in Heritage Conservation.
Hola y bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Patricia Zarate Singletary y soy la gerente del manejo de la subvención en nuestra herencia.
We are joined today by Cinco Rios Multilingual Initiatives, who will be doing the interpretation on the separate audio channel for Spanish. I'm going to let them introduce themselves now.
Hola y buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Roxana y junto con mi cointérprete Lupita estaremos proporcionando interpretación simultánea inglés y español de parte de Cinco Ríos Multilingual Initiatives. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roxana, and together with my co-interpreter Lupita, we will be providing simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish. Antes que nada, les damos las gracias por su compromiso a la creación de un espacio multilingüe. First of all, thank you for your commitment in co-creating a multilingual space. Les pedimos por favor que les ayuden a crear este espacio bilingüe. Les recordamos que por favor hablan fuerte, claro y sobre todo a un ritmo moderado, especialmente si están leyendo. Por favor, no use acrónimos que no todos en este grupo conocen. Hablen una sola persona a la vez. Y si es bilingüe, por favor, les pedimos que se animen a hablar en el idioma no dominante para acercarnos a la habilidad multilingüe del espacio. No se les olvide hablar español en el canal de español e inglés en el canal de inglés. Y si ve que una de las intérpretes alza la manita emoji, es un pequeño recordatorio que hay que hablar un poquito más despacio. También de pronto les recordaremos en el chat que por favor bajen un poco el paso, no se interrumpen, simplemente es para que reconozcan que tienen que bajar un poco la velocidad. All right, we ask you to do your part in co-creating this multilingual space where we ask you to please remember to speak loudly, clearly, and most importantly at a moderate pace, especially if you are reading. Please do not use acronyms in this group that this group isn't familiar with, and speak one person at a time. If you're not bilingual in English and Spanish, you will have to select a channel to participate. If you are bilingual, we encourage you to speak in the non-dominant language to truly lean into the multilingual skill of this group. Just don't forget to speak Spanish into the Spanish channel and English into the English channel. If you see one of the interpreters raise their little emoji hand or send you a little message on chat, it's just a gentle reminder to speak a little slowly. No need to apologize or stop. Just continue on and recognize that we're asking you to speak a little slower. To access interpretation in English, please select the globe in the lower part of your screen with a message about language interpretation. Click on the globe and select the language in which you would like to participate and listen during the session. If you're joining through your smartphone or tablet, you can click on the three dots at the bottom right corner of your screen, select Language Interpretation, and choose your language. Make sure to click on Done and you'll be set. Para acceder a la interpretación en español, por favor elija el globo en la parte inferior de sus pantallas con un mensaje sobre la interpretación de idiomas. Hagan clic en el globo y elijan el idioma en el que les gustaría participar y escuchar durante esta sesión. Si nos acompaña a través de su tablet o celular, puede hacer clic en los tres puntos en la esquina derecha de la parte inferior de su pantalla. Elija interpretación de idiomas y después seleccione su idioma. Asegúrese de hacer clic de finalizado y estarán listas. Cualquier cosa, mande un mensaje en el chat. If you have any issues, please let us know in the chat and we're ready to begin. Estamos listos para iniciar.
Thank you so much, Cinco Rios. As they said, our meeting is being held in English and Spanish. You all have access to the chat. I welcome you to use it, but please only place questions in the Q&A feature of Zoom webinar. I'm also going to launch a poll to find out who among us is using the Spanish channel. This helps us with data, and so please answer that question when you have a second. Our agenda for the Basics of Grant Writing webinar today is first a quick introduction and Nuestra Herencia Grant Program recap. We will talk about what is a grant, how you can get started in the grant writing process, and the details of the Nuestra Herencia application. We will also have designated question and answer time throughout the program. But first things first, who are we? I'll start by introducing myself again. My name is Patricia Zarate Singletary. I am the Preservation Grants Manager at Latinos in Heritage Conservation. I'm going to have our Director of Development say hello really fast, and then I will tell you about our organization.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia. My name is Layden Mendez, and I'm the Director of Development with Latinos in Heritage Conservation, currently in South Carolina. Happy to be here. Nice to see you all.
Thank you, Layden. We are also joined by our Development Manager, who is off video today and running our chat. Thank you so much, Renee. So if you're not familiar with Latinos in Heritage Conservation, we are the leading nonprofit dedicated to preserving Latinx spaces, stories, and cultural heritage across the United States. Our mission is to build a movement that affirms Latinx heritage through education, conservation, and leadership development. Our work includes programs like the Abuelas Project, the Latinx Preservation Toolkit, and the Endangered Latinx Landmarks Program. Before we continue this presentation, I would like to make a brief note about why LHC uses the term Latinx. Our organization has embraced Latinx as a gender-inclusive way to refer to people of Latin American descent. But we understand that Latinx identity is complex and diverse, and people use a wide variety of identifying labels. Whether you use Latino, Latina, Hispanic, Chicano, Tejano, or any other label that identifies your culture and ethnicity, we are here to serve you. You do not need to use Latinx in order to apply to our grant program or to engage with LHC in any way. There is a space in the grant application for you to indicate your preferred term. Language is fluid and ever-changing, and we do not pretend to be the ultimate authority on this matter. Thank you for allowing me to speak on that, and we are always open to feedback from our community. Since this is the Basics of Grant Writing webinar, I thought we'd start at the very beginning. What is a grant? A grant is a financial award given to support an organization in achieving a specific goal or purpose. This goal or purpose can be a specific project or program, a capital campaign, which means raising a large amount of money for something big or expensive, or it can even be for your organization's general operations. Grants are typically awarded by the government, a private or community foundation, a corporation, or a nonprofit like us at LHC. Unlike donations, grants typically come with designated purposes and expectations for progress updates. Those are labeled restricted grants, but there may also be unrestricted grants out there by other funders, which means that those funds can be used as needed by your organization. It is important that you use the funds as outlined in the grant you are awarded, as you are often required to report updates and share how you spent the money. So now that we've established what even is a grant, let's dive into the Nuestra Herencia Grant Program. Nuestra Herencia is the nation's first grant program dedicated exclusively to funding Latinx heritage projects. It's a big deal. We can give a little clap. Less than 1% of sites listed on the National Register of Historic Places represent Latinx history. So being able to have a program like this is a huge step forward in our field, and we are excited to begin the second year of this journey. We have $600,000 in annual funding, and the program's goal is to empower grassroots, Latinx-focused nonprofit organizations and community groups to protect and celebrate Latinx heritage. Our partners in this work are the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, It is through their generous support that we are able to offer the Nuestra Herencia Grant Program. We are also helped by our friends at the Social Impact Fund. Now, who can apply to Nuestra Herencia? In order to apply, your organization must be a registered 501c3 nonprofit or be fiscally sponsored by one. Your organization must also be Latinx-led or serve Latinx communities. This is a restricted, project-based grant, meaning that the money has to be used for a specific project that you will propose in your application. This grant cannot be used for general operating expenses like salaries. For a more in-depth look at our guidelines, please watch the recording of the Grant Program Overview webinar that we led last week. This recording will be available on our website by the end of this week. It is not there yet, but will be soon. Today is about the basics of grant writing. And this grant chart here will help you get started. And we're going to talk about how to apply these basic principles to the Nuestra Herencia Grant Program. This is a grant life cycle, and it is a great resource to use as you begin this process. It guides you through the different steps of grant management, starting with the pre-award phase. The pre-award phase is comprised of project development, identifying funding opportunities, writing the proposal, and submitting the proposal. There's also the post-award phase, which consists of accepting the grant fund, execution of the project, listing and managing the fund, sending reports to the grantor, and the closeout of the grant cycle. The first step is understanding where you are on this cycle so that you can determine where to go next. Today, we are going to focus on the pre-award components. We have a webinar in January titled After the Award that will go into the specifics of grant management for Nuestra Herencia. You are all currently in the pre-award phase, meaning you are focusing on project development and identifying funders. With project development, before you even find funding opportunities, it is good to take stock of your organization and the work you do to help identify what you specifically need funding for. Home in on exactly what your idea is to ensure your intent is clear, which will help you align with potential funders. Some questions you can ask yourself are, which of your current projects is most in need of funding? Or, is there a new idea that you've been wanting to launch, but just haven't had the money to do so yet? Either way, you should identify what the objectives of the funding is and how a grant would help you achieve your nonprofit's goals. It is also a good idea to have an idea of roughly how much money you need to accomplish your project. Having this number will help you identify which grant programs you should prioritize and focus on depending on the amount of money that they have available and the size of the grants that they offer. For Nuestra Herencia, our grants range from $5,000 to $100,000, depending on the project category that you apply to. And we have $600,000 available to give away per cycle. Once you have a project in mind, you will need to identify potential funders and find grant opportunities. A funder can be a foundation, government agency, nonprofit, or corporation. You all have clearly found at least one potential funder, considering you are on this webinar. But some ways to look for more include using a grant software like Instrumental or Candid/GuideStar. Hot tip is that GuideStar is sometimes available to use for free at public libraries. You can also subscribe to relevant newsletters like Philanthropy Today or newsletters from foundations you're interested in working with. And of course, networking is a great way to find out about opportunities. If you see an organization doing work that is similar to what you want to do, then reach out and see if they can tell you how they fundraised for it. And that might lead you to new grant opportunities. But one of the biggest pieces of advice that we can give you in the pre-award phase is to understand the funders. It can feel great to identify a lot of funding opportunities, but it is so important to understand what the funders are specifically looking for so that you can align your goals properly. It is not a good use of your time to apply to every opportunity there is without paying attention to a funder's goals. Understanding the funder's priorities and guidelines is a crucial step before writing the application and is the best way to increase your success rate. Let's start by understanding the funder you're currently interested in, Latinos in Heritage Conservation. Our mission is to build a movement that affirms Latinx heritage through education, conservation, and leadership development. Our vision is a just world that values Latinx heritage, people, and places. Now, based on those two statements, you should consider how your organization and project idea contribute to this national movement for Latinx heritage, and how your organization can help build a more just world. Nuestra Herencia also has specific funding goals. These funding goals identify our priorities when it comes to evaluating and funding projects. They are built into the rubric that we use to score applications. Our goals are conservation of place-based history through documenting the history of buildings, landmarks, neighborhoods, communities, or cities, along with its significance to Latinx heritage and history. Our second goal is the physical preservation and restoration of public spaces, of places and spaces connected to Latinx heritage and history for public use. Identification of sites throughout the country connected to Latinx heritage and history through historic context surveys, oral histories, and other methods. Nominating Latinx sites to local, state, and national historic registration lists to increase representation. We will actually have a whole webinar on that topic next month. Representations of minoritized histories within the Latinx community, such as Afro-Latino, LGBTQIA+, and Indigenous narratives. And finally, increasing the capacity of Latinx preservation nonprofits by supporting organizational capacity building. These are our funding goals, and one of the best places to start this entire process. But knowing the funding goals won't be very helpful if you aren't familiar with the guidelines. Make sure you pay close attention to the basic eligibility rules. Are you even eligible to apply? Are you a nonprofit? Or do you need to find a fiscal sponsor? Are you Latinx led? Or are you Latinx serving? Is your audience made up of Latinx community members? These are important questions to ask yourself before considering applying to Nuestra Herencia. You'll also want to think about the grant period. When would you actually receive this money that you're applying for? And how long do you have to use it? Can your project timeline fit into that period? Good thing to know. Also, what are the things that this money cannot be used for, which is also known as a non-allowable expense? What can this grant not fund? You want to know that now so that you do not submit a request for funding for something that is not allowed. And you'll also want to know, at least for us, the project categories. Our grant program has 4 project categories that you can apply under. You may only apply to one category. Understanding these categories' purposes and specific eligibility requirements is another important step before beginning your application. Our categories are capital projects, project planning, building organizational strength, and community interpretation and engagement. You can learn more about these project categories by attending one of our upcoming category deep dive webinars or by reading the guidelines on our website. Now that you have taken the time to understand the funder and their goals, you can begin writing your project proposal. That is another way of saying that you can start the application process. Your very first step is to build a proposal team. Who is going to be contributing to the application? Collaboration is very important with grants, especially if there are multiple people involved with the project that all have different pieces of information to contribute. Even with all those people contributing, you want to make sure that your proposal has a single voice. So do assign a leader that can edit everything to ensure a clear narrative before you send it in. For Nuestra Herencia, you will be using the grant software Submittable to send in your application. The Submittable system is fairly easy to use, but it is not the best place to brainstorm and collaborate on how you want to answer the questions. This is why we highly recommend downloading the application template that is available on our website and will be added to the chat by one of my team members here today. You can upload this document to OneDrive or Google Drive or any other cloud-based service your organization uses, and then you can work on it together as a team. This way, you would be able to write and edit online, and your team can make suggestions, track changes, and collaborate on the questions. Once you are confident with your answers, the team leader can then input that information into the submittable application form. Please note that the application template does include your word limit for each question. Make sure you check on that as you're drafting your responses. Also, all questions can be answered in either descriptive bullet points or in narrative paragraph form, depending on your preference. Every grant application is different, and there are some common components that make up a proposal, but today we're going to focus specifically on what is in the Nuestra Herencia application. We'll skip over grant contact information and fiscal sponsor information, as those are really just asking for your names, phone numbers, and email. Before we get to all that, though, we're going to take a look at the scoring rubric. I'm going to stop my screen share so I can show it to you in a bigger version. Thank you all for your patience as I get this up. While you are submitting your application, you are going to want to reference the rubric. The Nuestra Herencia rubric identifies which specific question contribute to your points in each section. We are very transparent about where your points are coming from. Please use this information to your advantage. Now please hold as I pull back up our wonderful presentation. And I'll ask my teammates to put that in the chat if they haven't already. Project organization information is where the application really begins. This section contains a common grant proposal element known as the executive summary. This is like an elevator pitch for your organization. If reviewers don't read anything else in the application, what would you want them to know? For our application, the executive summary is built into question 16. Provide a brief history of your organization. In that question, you will need to answer all of the components that are listed on this slide. Your origin story, your mission statement, key areas of focus in your community, significant achievements, and leadership and structure. Remember to keep your funder's mission and goals in mind when preparing your answer. How can you present your organization in a way that shows clear alignment with Latinos in heritage conservation and Nuestra Herencia's goals? Questions in the project organization section account for 45 points out of your total application score of 100. These questions correspond to rubric sections: advancing equity, intentional programming, organization's mission and vision statement, and borderland application. The project proposal section is where you will outline the work that you want to do and make the case for why we should fund it. You will start with a brief project summary that will highlight what you need. It will only be 3 to 5 sentences that summarize your project and how LHC grant funds will be used. From there, you will provide a detailed project description in question 27. Make sure your answer addresses all of the questions listed on this slide, and they are also built into the application. What is your project about? You'll want to describe the main activities and purpose of your project. Why is this site or project important to Latinx history and/or community? Please explain its historic significance and context. It's important to remember that the person reading your application likely does not live in the same city as you. So sharing local history and background information can be a really great way to make a case for your project. Giving that context, because otherwise people may just not know enough about your area to understand its significance. How does this project help preserve, share, or honor Latinx history? How does this project represent creativity or innovation for your organization? Is this a brand new idea? Has it ever been done before by you or anyone else? All good things to note. If public participation is a goal, you'll want to describe the target audience and estimate the attendance. And finally, what will the specific products and outcomes be for this project? The final part of the detailed project description asks about your product and outcomes. It is very important to be extremely clear about what you plan to accomplish during the grant period. A good way to do this is through SMART goals. You may already be familiar with this framework, and if you are, then you likely know that it can help you clearly define your goals and objectives. SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. There are numerous resources online that can tell you more about how to craft SMART goals. And it's just something to keep in mind. It's not required, as long as you're clear about your objectives. Now, question 27, the project description, as we just discussed, is the primary component of your larger project proposal. But the other questions in this section do still play an important part. Now, to take a little time about what it takes to write a compelling and clear narrative for your project, I'm going to pass it over to our Director of Development, Layden, who has written many grants and can share a little bit more about how to craft that compelling narrative.
All right. Thank you so much, Patricia. All right. So when you're compiling your narrative, the first thing you want to start with is alignment. Making sure that your project's goals, methods, and your subject matter match the funder's priorities, and to make sure that a strong narrative should feel like a natural fit. It won't feel like a stretch. This is just looking at that mission and vision again of that organization and making sure that the project that you're proposing aligns with those. And then as well as telling a clear and impactful story. So explain why your project matters, bring passion to it, use plain language and make sure you're not using too much jargon. Avoid using any technical language that others outside of your field may not understand. And be sure to put in a lot of that data, human-centered examples, make it relatable. And another great thing is to bring in that human element that makes people feel connected to your story. Having that impactful story will not only showcase how great your project is, but also why it matters. And then feasibility. To show feasibility, you want to include some realistic timelines, measurable outcomes, and evidence of capacity. So evidence of capacity would look like your staff expertise, past successes with grants that or projects you've done in the past, partnerships that you've worked on, as well as any other sorts of evidence that you can muster up on KPIs and deliverables. Then we go on to budget and narrative. So your budget and narrative, those must match. Make sure that they're consistent between the two, your story and the numbers of both of those. So what that looks like is your narrative is a description of what your budget is detailing. The way that you break down your budget, make sure that the narrative supports that and details what each line item, the activity would look like. All right, and then I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Layden.
Mhm.
So the project proposal section, the questions here account for 55 points out of your total application score of 100. The questions in this section correspond to the rubric areas of significance, urgency, impact, project readiness, and aligns with LHC. Support materials is the final section of the application. Support materials in a grant application refer to additional documents, data, or evidence beyond the main proposal narrative that are used to back up your project's need, feasibility, and impact. This is where you will upload your project budget and justify why you are asking for this amount of money. Support materials account for 10 points of your total score and specifically contribute to the project readiness section of the rubric. Keep in mind that anything you upload should really speak to your readiness. By that, I mean that the materials you share with us should show that your organization is ready to complete the project you have proposed, that you have the right team members, you have the right proposals and partners, and that you have community support that you need to get the job done. As Layden said, it's about feasibility and readiness. We want your application to show us that you will be able to do what you say you want to do. Now, I gave project budget instructions in our grant overview webinar, but I want to walk through them again because the budget is such an important part of your proposal. First things first, cash match is not required. The focus of the budget is to show how you would spend the money you are requesting from LHC. If the grant amount is the entirety of what you will spend on the proposed project, then that is all you need to account for. If you ask us for $20,000 and the project cost $20,000, that's all we need to see. But if the grant amount is a portion of a larger budget for a proposed project, then please include details about the remaining expenses and income. If there is a big difference in what you need versus what we can give, then filling out this cost sharing section and showing that you have secured other funds will let us know that the project can be successful. For example, let's say you were requesting $100,000 from us in a capital project grant, but the work that you need done to the building is $400,000. In that case, we want to see the entire project budget and know what your other sources of income are to cover the expenses that fall outside of the $100,000 that we can give. Grant reviewers need to know that there are enough funds to accomplish the project that you propose. And you will input that information in the cost sharing column. As you are filling out the budget, you may customize the titles of the budget categories to fit your project's specific needs. The pre-written categories are examples. Feel free to remove or replace them with categories that better reflect your project, and use the blank rows to add any additional expense types. We have this template on our website and probably in the chat. You may be familiar with a budget narrative, which is a written explanation in a grant application that justifies each budget line item by explaining why the expense is necessary for the project, how the cost was estimated, and how it supports the overall project goals. Rather than require a narrative as a separate document, we have incorporated the narrative into the budget template in this column, Project Budget Notes. You will use this column to explain and justify the how and/or why a line item helps to meet your project goals. You will also note if the amount you put is an estimate or if you are pooling that number from a specific proposal. Emphasis here on project budget notes, not narrative, notes. Short bullet points are acceptable. Now that we've walked through all the components of the Nuestra Herencia grant application, I'm going to call on Layden again to give us some tips and tricks on how to write a grant proposal. Share some of her experience.
All right. Thank you, Patricia. All right, so some tips and tricks for writing a grant proposal is to make sure you're building those relationships early. What that looks like is reaching out to your grant managers at the foundations that you're looking to apply to, making sure that you're not just submitting that cold LOI, but reaching out either via email or a phone call if possible. I always prefer to do a video call just so that we get that nice face-to-face interaction. Also, reading your guidelines, make sure that you fit all of the requirements. Make sure that you submit things in the preferred PDF or Word document format. I've done that before and messed up a really big grant by submitting in a Word document when they requested PDF. So be sure you're reading every detail. It helps me when I print out the document and then go over it with a highlighter to note anything that's important. And then evaluate before you submit. Make sure the proposal answers every question, reflects the funder's language and priorities, their values, and you can even have a peer to review it to make sure you catch any gaps. It also helps if you give the peer reviewer the questions that you're looking to answer and see if they find those answers for those questions within your proposal. As well as playing the long game. So if you don't get funded, ask for feedback. There's going to be a lot of no's in grant writing, and that doesn't mean that your project isn't worth funding or that, you know, you wrote a terrible proposal or anything like that. There are so many other organizations that are looking to get funding with so many great projects. And sometimes it could be, you know, just a matter of alignment. It could be a matter of too many people applying. But whatever the case is, ask for feedback. Use that feedback in future grant applications with the same funder, and you may still get that same grant in the next cycle. So those relationships matter, and learning from them is super important. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Layden. We're going to take a quick break for some questions. If you have any, please put them in the Q&A feature. I also want to speak to what Layden was just sharing as well in terms of not being too dejected if your application doesn't make it. For context, in our first cycle, we received 106 applications to this program, which was $3.4 million in requested funds, and we had $600,000 available to give. I'm not saying that to scare you. I just want you to understand the context and to encourage you, as Layden said, to reach out to me with questions, to look at things closely, and to understand that you have to play that long game. Do we have any questions? Well, we don't seem to, so I'm going to keep going, and then we'll have another chance for questions later in the presentation. I would like to talk about something that can be a bit of an elephant in the room when it comes to writing grant applications these days, and that is the use of artificial intelligence. I'm sure that many of us here today are familiar with ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, or one of the many other AI features introduced by major tech companies recently. I want to acknowledge that it can be very tempting to use AI if this is your first time preparing a grant application, or if you work for a small organization and are looking to lessen your load. I just want to encourage you all, though, to not be afraid to work on your application without relying on AI. We have designed Nuestra Herencia Grant's application to be straightforward and accessible to first-time applicants. We did this by making sure that all questions can be answered in bullet points or narrative format, depending on the applicant's preference. The Advancing Equity section on our rubric gives more points to organizations who have budgets that are under $500,000, who have less paid staff, and those that don't have a grant writer. And on the whole, we score your application based on the quality of your ideas and your ability to execute the project, not on the writing style itself. For 6 out of 14 of our grantees last year, Nuestra Herencia was the first grant that their organization ever received. And to be very clear, LHC grant reviewers and staff do not use AI in the review and scoring process. We read what you submit, and we want to hear your voice in it. You are the best person to speak for your organization and project. AI tools are trained on data sets that may carry historical bias, omission, or misrepresentation, particularly in the context of marginalized communities. AI cannot speak for our Latinx community. The lived experiences of our communities cannot be automated. Please keep that in mind. All that being said, LHC does not formally prohibit the use of AI in preparing grant applications. because identifying AI written language can be difficult. AI checkers are unreliable, and we are not putting that additional responsibility on our reviewers. So if you do use AI, I want to share with you some suggested guidelines and best practices for using this tool. To begin, please do not let AI write your first draft. If you do, that AI-generated content may contain plagiarism or bias. Instead, we recommend that you start with your own words and ideas, and then use AI for proofreading and editing. We recommend collaborating with these tools rather than fully outsourcing. You will also want to double check any AI-generated information or wording that you use. AI is not a reliable or factual source for any kind of research, as it is known to generate inaccurate, biased, or fabricated information. Even if you search a quick question on Google and you read the AI overview that pops up, be sure to check the source that it is pulling the information from. I've seen it make mistakes many times. I also want to make sure that you all protect your ideas and data. Information you share with public chatbots, like ChatGPT, can be used to train the platform and then may appear in other user requests. And finally, even though AI is a great tool for proofreading, human feedback still matters. Your colleagues and friends can check for cultural tone, share background knowledge, and give more personalized, encouraging feedback than AI can. Don't underestimate getting another person's eyes on your work. They may have a whole new perspective to share. Here is the timeline for the Nuestra Herencia Grant Program. The application is now open and available on Submittable. It will be due on Submittable on February 13th at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please remember that. 11:59 Central Time. We will then be reviewing the applications and we will announce the awards in June 2026. We also have several more upcoming webinars, including our category deep dives on all 4 of our categories. We will also be talking about why historic designations matter and why that's one of our key funding goals. And the after award webinar in January will talk about grant management, what it looks like if you are chosen for funding. Something new that I am offering this cycle is that I will be hosting several office hour sessions that will help you begin your application and talk about your project. Please note that these are open to the public. You must register in advance, and questions will be answered in the order in which they are received. But since it's public, any question you ask me in this Zoom room will be heard by anyone else in attendance. So just please remember that. I will be available to meet one-on-one as well. Please email me if you're interested or have questions, but my availability is limited. These webinars and office hours are designed to provide you with all the information that you need. There's my email address. That's me. And we are now done with the webinar. I will now take more questions. I'll leave my email up there for a second while I take a sip of water. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A feature. I see a question in here about a specific project. I can't answer those on the line. That would have to be an email or an individual call. But do I have any general questions about grant writing or about the Nuestra Herencia Grant Program? We also have Layden online to answer questions. I have a question from Annalicia that says, can I send details about my project in the email request to potentially meet with you? Yes, you may. You may email me, share some information about your project, and I will give you either direct feedback over email or in a call that we schedule. Any more questions? I see a question that is in Spanish, and I am going to quickly translate that using an online thing. Oh, we have a question about if the application can be completed in Spanish. Yes, I will actually pull up our submittable so you can see what it looks like. This is our submittable application screen where you see all of the opportunities we currently have open for applications. And you can see that we have both the Nuestra Herencia Grant Program in English and available in Spanish. You may submit your application in English or Spanish. Layden, I have a question that I would love for you to answer possibly. The question is, do you have any tips for how small Latinx-led nonprofits can build strong initial relationships with foundations, especially when you're connecting with them for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. So for Latinx organizations to build strong relationships with foundations when meeting for the first time, if you can find a mutual connection that you share, whether that be a board member that can help you out, a volunteer who also volunteers at another organization and might know somebody, a personal introduction is the gold standard, 100% best. If that is not possible, another way to potentially reach out and make a connection is to send an email talking about the work that you're doing and how it aligns with their work and request a meeting. See if you can get a video call or a phone call to chat with them and see what alignments and potential partnerships are possible there. As well as in the platform that we use Instrumental to search for our grants opportunities. There is this feature where you can search into their past fundees, I believe, that your grantees, and look to see if they've funded other Latino organizations in the past. That's a good indicator that they'll be open and receptive to your work as well. So I tend to lead with that and say, oh, I saw you did great work with Latinx organization A, and we do very similar work, and you can bring that up as well. Sometimes organizations will have on their websites their previous grantees, and you can also look through those projects, but if they don't, a tool like Instrumental can help you dig into that information a little better.
Thank you, Layden. I see a question in the chat, but reminder, please put questions in question and answer to make sure I see them. But the question is, do you have a better chance if you submit early for Nuestra Herencia? For us, the answer is no. The due date is February 13th. When you submit will not be a factor in the rubric or scoring at all. Any other questions? I do also want to make sure to share that we do have sample applications available on our website. They are in the section. I will just screen share again in 1 second. So if you are looking at our website and you go directly to the Nuestra Herencia webpage, you're going to scroll down so you get to our grant guidelines. This is where all of the information is, so please read all of this. But specifically, under Helping You Succeed, you can see that we provide examples of funded applications. These are Cycle 1 grantees that we did fund. We've blocked out any super personal information, but it still gives you a good idea as to what we're looking for when it comes to an application or a project idea. Do I have any other questions? All right, I think I will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Layden, and thank you so much, Cinco Rios, and everyone who joined us today. Have a great day and feel free to email me. Bye.